So hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Jason Vassar Elong, and my colleague Dr. Danae Y. Fairweather, and I are here to present an update on our global and digital prototype, Cultural Border Crossing, Reconciling Shared History.
We want all learners in the African diaspora to not only have access to this content, but also to connect in an epistemological way. In other words, we want to ensure that learners understand how we learn about each other and the implications of that learning. To that end, we intend to challenge white supremacist ideologies about members of the African diaspora. In the anthropology of white supremacy, the authors define white supremacy as a system that establishes classifications of people based on phenotypical and behavioral characteristics. This hierarchy places whiteness at the top, the most powerful and civilized, while everyone else is othered. We argue that white supremacy continues to be affirmed, especially within the educational system, and by those who identify with and internalize the elements of structural whiteness, thus contributing to the epistemological dissonance present within the African diaspora.
Access to our research is important in order for our intended audience to understand its implications for how we interface with one another in society. We want to ensure that members of the African diaspora have access to this curriculum, which includes translations into indigenous African languages and colonial languages of all curricula components. The aim is to challenge preconceived notions about members of the African diaspora to, in effect, decolonize, at least from a cognitive perspective. We will consult with our networks for those translations.
For this presentation, we would like to provide an update to our research into building a cultural border crossing global digital curriculum. In our last presentation at the Culture Symposium 2024, we described the theoretical framework, rationale, and background information for our CBC curriculum. And here we will share our new theoretical framework, provide an overview on themes that have emerged from the data collection. We will end with a call to action to get you, our viewers, involved.
So the idea for this course was birthed from a kernel of curiosity. I wonder how or if members of the African diaspora learn about each other and their experiences with colonialism. With respect to our shared trauma tied to the transatlantic slave trade, or what's known as the transatlantic slave trade, our experiences within that history are varied on one group to group or individual levels. For example, while our shared history is a common thread, no two people of the African diaspora have the same experiences day to day. So we decided to learn more about each other and in so doing, about ourselves. Thus, the creation of our course, Across the Water, which is a working title right now.
Our theoretical framework is multidimensional. In the first place, we utilize Frantz Fanon's decolonization theory, which analyzes how the identities of members of the African diaspora are shaped, or in some cases, deformed. Switching to Walter Rodney's dependency theory, which is fitting a Eurocentric model, it held that all societies progress through similar stages of development.
So Fanon's Africana phenomenology explores the lived experiences of those within the African diaspora and abroad from the continent of Africa. And Rodney's examines the context in which those lived experiences occur. So anthropology and Black liberation is an anthropological abolitionist approach to working within, against, and beyond the state of in service of collective liberation.
What we found as common ground among both of these theorists is that as a global Black community, we must first be committed to building new self-defined social and political structures. We must prioritize teaching individuals how to advocate for change within an unjust system. And we must disrupt the system in an effort to liberate Black people to manifest their own destinies as they are forced to live in disparate parts of the world, of the Western world, and beyond.
So our Cultural Border Crossing curriculum, or CBC curriculum, will help our targeted demographic of learners, those Black adults between the ages of 17 to 24. These are the ages for those who are classified as traditional college-age students. Our courses will be initially developed for the academy, but will be reworked for community settings as well to meet the needs of those students who cannot afford college or who chose a different path to further their education.
Our course will be anthropological, but we'll also use literature, for example, novels, poems, essays, and we'll be proctored using PowerPoint, Google Slides, Google Classroom, Prezi, and we'll also utilize links to videos, visual arts, and other modes of learning.
So part of our methodology to gather our data was the cultivation of a questionnaire. Our research questions guided conversations among members of the African diaspora as we discussed our histories and lived experiences related to chattel slavery in the Americas and colonization in Africa. Our research questions also challenged institutions of higher learning to include curricula like ours that provide nuance.
As we gather data to develop our course, we have the following learning outcomes. The first is to articulate how cultural and historical dissonance manifests in the social reality of participants. We are also concerned with how students are able to utilize appropriate anthropological methods and design and conduct digital research projects that address community-based issues. And we assume that through arts-based learning, we will collaborate effectively to develop research projects that promote cultural sustainability, which is an important competency and skill. We also want to teach how to apply theoretical frameworks in professional and social settings.
So as you can see here, our pedagogical approach is a cycle of information. To gather our data, we have organized focus groups to generate ideas, which will help us develop our learning outcomes. To understand the epistemological skill sets among participants, in effect, how they learn and are continuing to learn about the African diaspora, and will tailor our coursework to fit those modalities of learning. Generate activities for the classroom that generate a nuanced perspective of lived experiences. Use case studies to develop real-world scenarios or lived experiences. Develop a syllabus, of course, and generate arts-based, problem-based, and digital competencies for continued use for adult learners.
And speaking of our data, our questionnaire asked the following of our participants. We asked 5 specific questions within our questionnaire. And as you can see, most of them are concerning the African diaspora.
So if you can see on our graph here that Denise has put together, it's a beautiful graph that shows where some of our data is coming from. So far, our data reflects learning experiences from the following places. We use SurveyMonkey and Google Forms to collect data. On SurveyMonkey, we had 7 informants, and on Google Forms, we had 4, for a total right now of 12 informants, but that number will continue to grow. So far, we have 2 from Zimbabwe, we have 1 from Cameroon, 1 from South America, 1 from the Bahamas, 1 from Canada, and 1 from Belize, and then we had 5 informants from the United States. So the following data is a cursory overview of what our data suggests. So far, our respondents define the African diaspora as the following. They all agree that the African diaspora is connected through lineage and by descent, while some emphasize African descendants living in different lands but still controlled and governed by European influence. This, of course, raises important questions for the survey course to overall research. And Dr. Fairweather and I will continue to explore this theme a lot more as we continue.
For instance, one of our participants put, to me, quote, to me, the African diaspora represents all people who can trace their ancestry back to the continent of Africa. The diaspora is not a physical place, but the shared historical and cultural connection of Black people everywhere. Now, after reading this, Dr. Jason and I, we quickly understood we were speaking to individuals who can offer rich information. The connecting thread resonated well as our research aims to do just that, to connect the people of the African diaspora through scholarship, art, and discourse. Our respondents learned the following about the African diaspora. This was our second question. As is evident, there is much work to be done, as you can see from some of the data that we were able to collect. Even with these few responses on the perspectives of the history of African countries, this is where we see the emphasis needs to be. Some mentioned that they needed to do outside research to learn more, while others said their education on the African diaspora was either limited or misinformed.
Our respondents wanted to learn the following about the African diaspora. These results demonstrate the passion, enthusiasm, that we have for learning about each other and from each other. In the USA, for instance, the school system has children and youth believing that the history of Black people starts with slavery. Our respondents, full adults and professionals, noted that they are fascinated by the cultural parallels among and between the diaspora and would like to learn more about that.
As with any exchange, the following were a few takeaways regarding the state of the culture. One respondent suggested having an annual diaspora cultural day globally to showcase and celebrate the richness of the diaspora. They believe that this could expose youth to the richness of the diaspora and stop some cultures within the diaspora from becoming extinct.
One response sparked a sense of urgency to develop our course, which excited both of us. The question asked, how would you describe the state of the culture among the African diaspora within your community? This participant responded, in the U.S., the African diaspora is fragmented with moments of unity. However, due to shifting understanding of Blackness and Africanness, there are often complications of who even gets counted as part of the diaspora. So many don't even want the connection that African diaspora cultures go unrecognized or are made invisible in everyday life. So while I see African culture every day, very few acknowledge it unless it is to bring attention to their own blackness, end quote. Again, this response speaks to the connectivity among members of the African diaspora. In large part, we affirm that to be seen is less about representation and more about providing voice, which is what our course aims to do. Rather than only use the voices of scholars in the field, we believe that it is imperative as practitioners to also include the voices of those whose experiences are equally important. So though our research is exciting right now and it will continue to be exciting, we have some limitations. Our research is ongoing, and while we only have data from 12 individuals, we are limited in terms of the scope of what the research is telling us. However, this does not infer that the data collected isn't important. To the contrary, our work, even in this beginning phase, affirms the importance of this research. So as we gain new insights into the lives of those within the African diaspora and develop this course, we will continue to contribute to the body of work that helps to build sustainable communities through scholarship and educational frameworks.
Thanks, Jason. We are always looking to learn from members of the global Black community and invite participants to take our survey. This is a QR code for our questionnaire. Our most recent efforts to present our data, where we encourage people to participate, was of course the Culture Symposium this year, but also the May 2025 Association of Black Anthropologists Conference in Dakar, Senegal. We also have the African Diaspora Council. This is a World Africa Day in St. Louis, Missouri. That took place on the 24th of March, thanks to Dr. Jason. And then we also have the upcoming November 2025 American Anthropological Association meeting in New Orleans this year.
So thank you for your time and attention.
Yes, thank you. And we look forward to any questions or comments you may have. Thanks.